Oyster mushrooms are a group of large edible mushrooms that grow on wood, agricultural waste, and other dead plant material. There are dozens of recognized species and varieties of oyster mushroom. Some grow only in the tropics. Others are temperate species. They are native to every continent except Antarctica. Oyster mushrooms are widely cultivated and can be found in food markets from India to Indiana. Oyster mushrooms are traded commercially around the United States and Canada. Prices vary from week to week, but wholesale prices range from about $2 to $3 per pound. In the northern Rockies, the most common species is Pleurotus populinum, the oyster mushroom that grows on dead cottonwood trees. This fungus produces large white to gray or tan-colored mushrooms that have little or no stem and grow directly out of the wood they are decomposing. They often grow in clusters at the base of a dead tree or appear as stacks or shelves on the side of standing trees. Another local species is Pleurotus pulmonaris, which grows on conifer wood as well as on other hardwoods. These mushrooms are somewhat smaller and less productive than the cottonwood oyster mushroom. Both these species are cultured from local wild strains by Garden City Fungi and the Western Montana Mycological Association and are available as pure spawn cultures. A bag of spawn is included with this video. The information in this video applies to both of these local species. The important differences in these two species is their substrate, or what wood they prefer to grow on. The cottonwood oyster grows best on cottonwood logs, while the conifer wood oyster grows better on pine, Douglas fir, and other types of wood. We will illustrate inoculation techniques in this video. Inoculation using a power drill, inoculation using a sledge and wedge, and inoculation using a chainsaw. The best times to inoculate stumps or logs with oyster mushroom spawn are in the early spring and during the fall. Hot, dry summer conditions tend to kill the fungus before it can establish itself on the log, and the fungus goes dormant in freezing conditions. Temperatures in the 40 to 50 degree Fahrenheit range are ideal.
To take some of the inoculum, which I have here grown on some agricultural seed, some millet for this case. You can see how the mushroom's one big solid chunk inside this bag. This is a mycelium of the mushroom. Typically you'd see this if you were out in the woods and kicked over an old dead log. You'll see the white stuff maybe under a layer of leaves. You'll see the white fuzz that grows. That's actually the mycelium of some sort of mushroom out in the woods. And the mycelium's the vegetative part of the mushroom. It's more like I always use a comparison of an apple tree and an apple. This would be the apple tree. The mushroom itself is the apple. As you come pick the mushroom, you leave the mycelium, the vegetative part, behind, just like you do with an apple. Once you pick the apple, the tree stays there to put off fruit again next year. Mycelium likes to hold its food together. It's real connective. And it becomes almost back to the seed form again. Once it's into the stump, and same thing that happens in the bag, over the next few days, all the mycelial network, the threads, will begin to grow back together to hold this food source again. If we were to let this bag sit for 3 to 5 days, it would grow back and be solid white again. And when you're culturing mushrooms or in a commercial setting, everything's done in a real sterile environment. Inside this bag is a sterile environment. We sterilize the grain before we put the mushroom on it to ensure that that's all that we had growing on the grains, the species that we want. Now that we're out here in the open air, we're going to subject the sterilized mycelium to a real-life situation. So we want to minimize any sort of contamination that we can by using some disinfectant to clean the drill bits, washing our hands, wearing some latex gloves, anything you can do to keep the project as clean as you can, the better success you will have. When you're opening this bag, it's all sealed when you get it. You want to open it along the top, and this is enough mycelium, enough spawn to inoculate at least 20 to 30 trees. So you may not necessarily use it all in one inoculation session. And it can be closed back up just with some tape wherever you put the hole, and then you can allow it to grow back out, like I said earlier, let the mycelium take back over the millet again. And once it gets to that point, you can put it into the refrigerator and store it upwards to 6 months. So you can even inoculate some this
So you
fall.
could inoculate, use half the bag, inoculate some trees,
And
tape it up,
some more.
put it in the refrigerator, and then do some more, like even the next season.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's good to know.
Take this, and we're going to spray the bag, especially if it's been sitting in the refrigerator for a while or stored somewhere. You just dust and everything else can land on it. So you want to spray that really good.
Okay, that strawberry jam on there.
And it's simply just taking a cut right along the top, as close as you can, underneath the seal. Works sufficiently. Right outside there. Cool. And you got a nice little sprout. Okay. Oyster mushroom mycelium smells very reminiscent of fresh oysters. Very sweet. It has a particular smell to it.
I'm tempted to put that in my cereal bowl with sugar and milk to it.
Yeah, it's almost sweet, and that's a good sign, when you're working with the spawn. There's a real sweet smelling oyster.
What species do I inoculate my stump with? It very much depends on the species of the tree. Some mushrooms are strongly associated with certain tree species, while other mushroom species tend to associate with a number of different species of trees. The Siberian elm, which is a commonly introduced species of elm tree in the Pacific Northwest and Northern Rockies, is good food for Phlomuline of Litopes, the furry foot or the winter mushroom. This is a good edible mushroom. It's pretty easy to cultivate. The oyster mushroom, of course, grows best on the cottonwood tree, although the conifer oyster mushroom will grow on pines, not quite as well. And the conifer oyster mushroom will also grow on birch and some other hardwoods. Nematoloma capnoides or Hypholoma capnoides is a delicious brown spored mushroom that usually grows on down conifer wood. So this is a good candidate for inoculation in your woodlot. What other species? We have attempted to inoculate with Lentinus lepidius and Lentinus ponderosa, and I have not achieved any success with trying to get these species to grow in the field. We have had good luck with Hericium coralloides, and in fact, Hericium coralloides, the variety that grows on cottonwoods, is actually more productive in the wild than cultures, even in a sterile culture environment. So this seems like a very good candidate for propagation as well.
What do you want to pet?
We've got 3 different kinds of oyster or mushrooms here, not completely oysters. 2 different kinds of oysters, and then this is a Hericium species. Now, not all these are the localized species, but I brought them out just to show the variation in mushrooms themselves, and hopefully later today we're going to be able to go see some of the local variety of oyster that we're inoculating this stump with. The mushrooms you see up on the top are a variety called Pleurotus pulmonarius. It's typically a mushroom that's grows on both conifer and cottonwood. The mushroom down below it is Pleurotus ostratus, which is the common gray oyster. It's probably the most common oyster mushroom in the world. And then the one over here that's kind of has the coral effect is a Hericium species. And there's 3 or 4 different Hericium species that grow, and they're all very similar in their growth characteristics. This particular one is Erinaceous, which is used more in a commercial setting. That's why I brought it. It was at our farm growing. The local species we have is Hericium correlates, and correlates typically will have a little more of a coral branching type effect, and hopefully we'll see some of that today too. But both these species are edible. The oysters are a little more prolific in their fruiting, but the Hericium species has a great flavor. It has a real seafood type, lobster type flavor, some for personal consumption there on the property. And they both will grow on cottonwoods. All these mushrooms will grow on pretty much any deciduous type tree. So we're not just stuck with the cottonwood. You know, you can aspen trees will work. What else did we do last year?
Birch and maple.
Maple, yeah.
And you've had success with those fruiting?
So anything that's coming from a deciduous tree is pretty much a viable candidate for any of these mushrooms.
In my business, I need to also have something to inoculate Doug fir or spruce.
Mm-hmm.
I put some of this in Doug fir and spruce, so it's kind of a real life experiment to see maybe just take off.
Hericium will grow on conifer, and then, like I said, the pulmonarius, the local pulmonarius strain of Pleurotus will also grow on conifer. On conifer, they don't grow quite as quickly in general for all of them, just because of the conifer wood, the way it's made up. It's got so many different tannic acids and stuff inside the pine that just slow the growth, retard the growth a little bit.
I may want to go back to some of my customers of last year who had conifers, and I may want to re-inoculate with them. Maybe it doesn't have to be necessarily edible mushroom, but okay.
No, you're talking about the acids and stuff and the turpentine and the pines. Right. Does that also mean that we're working a little better like on dead fir or are we similar with the pines or what? The fir will be a little bit better. Yeah. Okay. And that'll work. It's just slower. And a way you can kind of override that is to inoculate a little more, get a little heavier, put a little more inoculum into those kind of trees than you would into a cottonwood or an aspen. We figure out farming to fight. Right. Let's take a pan across this river. There's a couple real good candidate trees.
Okay.
As we look across this, the Clark Fork here, the tributary here, small channel of the Clark Fork, you can see we've got cottonwood trees across there, and you can see there's two or three that are beginning to die. You can see the one right across here is dead. And that's a perfect candidate tree. We've still got some of those small branches left intact. You can tell that tree's only been dead maybe a year or so. And trees that have been dead longer than that will lose a lot of those little small branches just through winter and wind and that kind of thing. And that tree right there would be an ideal candidate across the river for inoculation. While it's standing? While it's standing. You can inoculate these trees standing. You can down them if you want, or if the wind blows them down, you can inoculate stumps.
Now, if the tree's been dead, let's say 5 or 10 years, I'm assuming that by that time the thing has been invaded by other fungi that may protect the territory against the edible.
Exactly. And that's why we're looking to get, the newer trees or freshly cut trees with stumps, this kind of thing. You're going to have better success. Yeah. You can over-inoculate on an older tree and probably get some success.
Win the battle.
But when you've got a competitor fungi in there, they're just going to duke it out for the food source, and they'll be fighting against one another.
So that tree that's down over there looks like the beaver took down, laying on the ground.
Way over there.
That's flying the other side of it.
Yeah. Yep.
That would be a good candidate for the one without the bark here.
Exactly.
That looks pretty good, but I've only seen it. You see? going too deep for them, you think?
No, you can't really go too deep. You don't want to go completely through the tree, but in this case, since this stump's so large, we can go as deep as we can get it.
I'm kind of looking at the material coming out of there, you know. I think I get past the sapwood into the heartwood.
See? See.
Holes drilled in the stump. They're all going down about a 45-degree angle. We're going to be able to use this little funnel, we hope, to get the spawn right down that hole real conveniently. Funnel will fit right in. We got one of our clean little seals to make sure our plunger to make sure the hole's cleaned out good. Any larger pieces that don't break up in here, you can just break up with your hand so you can get that stuff really as fine as you can, so it's almost back this down to an individual kernel again. And we should, if it all works well. Be able to just broadcast some of this down until the hole fills up. Get on your funnel, go back with the plunger. And a teeny bit of this glue.
It'll squeeze out. I checked it.
Followed by a little bit more of the sawdust. It's going to make a real nice seal in there once that dries.
Now, the glue itself is a digestible material for the mycelium, isn't it?
Sure, the mycelium will just eat this glue up later on.
Yeah.
And that's it. Cool. It's really simple. We'll continue on around the tree.
Just a couple more shots in case that didn't turn out too good.
Yeah.
Okay, there's another nice hole. Oh, I see. Cool. Look at that. The plunger's working good. That's working good, yeah. Will the plunger go all the way through the funnel opening, or?
Uh-huh.
Okay. What I found, I had to push a little at a time. I couldn't pack it up real deep behind the funnel and push it. I had to push just a few at a time through.
Last year?
Yeah, and I just keep...
Well, that's...
I push about, 8 or 10 seeds down through, and then I'd pick up another 8, 10, put them through. And I can get them all the way to the bottom that way of the hole.
This millet's working a lot better.
How's that for dialogue? How's that?
Take one in the spring.
Well, I'm back. Now I'm taking him as often as once a month. Every August.
We're going to hell in that.
No.
How's that?
That's good. So it's simple as a chainsaw. We're just taking a little wedge out there, and then set these pieces out.
Do you need the glue there afterwards, or?
We could, sure. Why not? We'll just glue that piece right back in.
We're going to need to brush the sawdust out or anything, do you?
Not really, no.
Is that glue handy over there, John?
For this one, I think it'll be easiest just to put a little bit in your hand and... Oh. And then you can also take a little bit, set back on the top of your wedge. Put your pieces back in, and you can either use a nail, or if in this case we'll use a little wood glue just to tack that in. And once again, that's going to eventually fall out, but by that time the mycelium will have already moved into the wood. So this is another pretty simple technique.
There were pieces scattered all over. They thought that was so much fun.
Somebody's been eating this.
Yeah, the deer.
No, I'm not.
Deer by like.
I'm just doing this to show it. Usually we try and, I'd like to, well, they're still wet, and as long as it's wet, there's not going to be any contamination. But we'll get, there's space, there's trust for you, huh? I tell you. All right. And, wow, take it on in a ways.
You're actually splitting the log then.
Yeah.
The rings, is that where it needs to kind of get over?
Then keep going until we get a good split going. Oh, okay. Really, until it's split. There we go. Then we got an opening there. Then we got one there. Okay, we'll have that baby in. All right. One more. Hold on. We got one more.
They handle that sledge and those wedges just like that.
Yeah. I haven't brought it down. Are you still remind me of your camera?
Perfect.
And then my husband
Okay, hang on. Now we don't need this one anymore. But so who's got gloves now? Glenn, you want to open that bag? Yep.
to your left, and to your back.
So I got my waterproof boots on. Okay, so this is a good candidate log. I mean, you can see even though it's pretty dry here, you know, it's got a good source of moisture down there. I think we'll. It would probably be better if we could inoculate the stuff that's actually in the water, but it's,
So we can do later.
yeah. And we got the camera set up right here. He's got some gloves. Okay, go ahead. Okay, and here, give me your other hand. Now that won't kill.
My uncle carries alcohol with him, but it's not for disinfectant.
It will want contact, but it's not
He would
contact.
really see this as an exciting
The other thing is that the
enterprise.
will evaporate. That's why we didn't use bleach, because bleach tends to persist and kill it even after we don't want it to be, don't care about the sterilizer. Sprinkle it in there, hold your hands on the outside of the bag, never really get into the bag too much. It's really simple. Your hands are clean, so go ahead and begin to kind of push that on down in there and let it fall.
So how deep is the crack feed in, like 3 inches?
Oh yeah, bottom of the wedge.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, we probably won't, again, we're probably going to inoculate these pretty heavily. Sure. You don't have to inoculate it. See, take a look at how much spawn he's got in there. Probably not going to need to put that much in. No. Okay. Just to give you the idea of what you're shooting for. See, when we pull the wedges back out, the tree will close back up together and be nice and tight. And that's what we're looking for, is a nice tight seal between the mycelium and the tree so that it has the best chance of growing onto the that pretty much closes up. Then we got to look at the box guys. Back up. Now we didn't get. Yeah, we can hammer it back together. We'll go up there. We also didn't bring nails this time. We left our nails up the flathead yesterday. Use nails if you feel like you want to get the thing closer together. You can use nails. I don't think they're 100% necessary, but they do help. And you see we got a little bit of the crack's pretty well closed up at that point. Try and cover it up.
And then you know, if you had the provisions, would you wet this now, or?
Good. We even put peat moss on them to kind of seal. You know, you take some nice, you know, like sterile peat moss type of stuff and sprinkle it over the top, and that will combine some protection of the moisture and also give it a sterile, we call it a casing when we use it in mushroom growth. Cover that up, something like a Band-Aid. Yeah, like a Band-Aid. Keep it clean.
The oyster mushrooms might be compared with the lifestyle of a salmon, which lives its entire life out and then goes through a single reproductive event towards the end of its life. This is pretty much what happens. When we cultivate oyster mushrooms, they tend to grow throughout all the substrate and what we say capture the medium. They turn everything into a mat of fungus. And then at that point, they go through a change and they devote most of their energy not into growth, but into the production of spores and fruiting bodies. And oyster mushrooms, you usually get 2 or 3 fruitings out of a fully grown out substrate. But if you have a fairly large substrate, those fruitings may continue for 3 to 7 years. I've seen 7 years on some stumps, but usually oyster mushrooms will come up between 3 and 9 months after they've been inoculated into a log. Exceptions might be an exceptionally dry summer, or if the wood has already been cut and lain on the ground for a period of time before the inoculation occurred, another mushroom or another fungus species might well have taken over already. This video has provided the basic information you need to establish or reestablish oyster mushrooms on your woodlot. For more information, contact Garden City Fungi or the Western Montana Mycological Association at Post Office Box 7306, Missoula, Montana 59807.
There's a fungal jungle at our feet. Fun to find and good to eat. Let's explore the fungal jungle. Just outside the door, the fungal jungle. In the forests, there's a free store of wild mushrooms, mushrooms galore. Let's explore the fungal jungle. Just outside the door, the fungal jungle. Here a mushroom, there a mushroom, everywhere a mushroom, mushroom. There's a fungal jungle at our feet. Fun to find, good to eat. Let's explore the fungal jungle. Just outside the door, the fungal jungle.